part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
This episode of Cavs on the Break NBA Podcast is brought to you by our presenting sponsor, Newark AutoBody. With winter weather and slick road conditions comes black ice and accidents. And if you've been in an accident and your car needs a little TLC, look no further than Newark AutoBody in Zanesville AutoBody. Safe, reliable collision repairs is their business. Newark AutoBody in Zanesville AutoBody is a local family-run and veteran-owned business serving Newark, Zanesville, and surrounding areas. And guess what? They work with all insurance providers to make your experience hassle-free. And if you are a U.S. military veteran, even better. Ask about their special discounts for vets at the shop, and they'll be happy to help. Look, it can be hard finding a trustworthy car mechanic, but people over at Newark AutoBody in Zanesville AutoBody have you covered. They care for you first and make sure they keep you safe and back on the road. Visit them at autobodyofnewark.com and autobodyofzanesville.com to get your repair started. Our iCar Gold Class team of skilled collision repair technicians will make your vehicle like new again. Head on over to our show notes for links and tell them Press Play sent you.
Iguodala to Curry, back to Iguodala, up for the layup. Oh, blocked by James. It's over. It's over. Cleveland is a city of champions once again. The Cavaliers are NBA champions.
Hey, what's good? Welcome to Cavs on the Break NBA podcast right here on the Press Play Podcast Network. I'm John Sabol, alongside NBA writer, longtime NBA writer, Cavs writer. You read him, you love him on hoopswire.com. It's the legendary Sam Amico. Sam, what's happening, my man?
Not much, John. Just, hanging out.
Hanging out. Well, that's what the Cavs are doing, Sam, because it's been a rough couple days here. Well, rough one day, as we are one day removed as we record this here on the evening of, what day is it here? Thursday night on the 7th. Calendar about to flip to Friday, the 8th. I haven't been on the pod in a couple weeks here. You and Chase have been holding it down. A lot has changed. You know, one day the Cavs are killing it after before the All-Star break. Then the All-Star break happens, and then they sleepwalk through the first few games, and then more injuries pile up.
Yeah, when I look back at it, John, it almost seemed like it kind of started right before the All-Star break. They lost to a very undermanned Philly team at home, like the week of right before the All-Star break. And then they had to rally the next two nights later at home to beat, at that time, a struggling Bulls team. And then you went into the All-Star break. So it seemed like they had lost a little bit of their edge right there before the All-Star break. And since the All-Star break, just have not looked. And I said this earlier. I when I wrote the story last night after the Hawks game, after they lost to the Hawks, I thought, I feel almost like I'm writing about a different team than I was a month ago, like a totally different team.
No kidding.
They had won 17 of 18 in January to kick off the new year. They had the best record in the NBA for January. And then, February's just been very clunky. And now you've got an injury to Donovan Mitchell. And now you've got injury to Evan Mobley again. It's going to keep him out at least a week. But they just, even with Mitchell, they just seemed, I mean, nobody expects them to win 17 of 18 all the time, but the way they were playing, you would have think they could have kept it going. And they just haven't been able to do that right now. They've been just, for the most part, out of sorts. They've had good moments, good quarters, but and some great efforts. I mean, when they got down by 21 to the Hawks, they were down 21 in the third quarter and ended up taking the lead at the end of the third quarter. So they've had good moments. It's just they haven't been as consistent as they were during that 17 of 18 stretch. And I just think, well, what happened that they're not looking as sharp?
Yeah, they were leaking oil before the All-Star break. No one's talking about it enough. That's a great point, Sam. That undermanned Philly game when they lost by 2 was the start of the trend right there on February 12th. It kind of came out of nowhere. A little bump in the road, no big deal. Barely beat that Bulls team, then lose to Orlando and then Philly. And then we talked about it earlier today on your show on Facebook, 330 to go. By the way, Sam, you may want to plug that. Tell our Cavs on the Break listeners about this show that you've been doing that last couple of weeks. And I'll get back to my point.
Oh, yeah. 330 to go on Facebook. I also posted on hoopswire.com the video. I think I've had 4 shows. Tonight was show number 4. I go every Thursday live at 6:00 on Facebook. It's just Facebook's /330 to go. Really rising news website that covers the whole 330 area code and has done an outstanding job. So when they asked me if I would do that, I was like, yeah, I was all over it. But every Thursday, 6:00, talking Cavs, talking NBA. I have some special guests. I've flown solo a couple of times, but so far I've had 2 guests who listeners of this podcast will know well. My first guest was Chase Smith, and tonight was you. And I posted, yours was the first one I've ever posted to my website.
Oh boy, don't tell Chase that. He'll get jealous.
Yeah, I'm not, hopefully Chase won't listen to this and find out anyway. Because he'll be, but I didn't know I could until really tonight. So that's my excuse for Chase.
Gotta love technology. Well, my point was, on your show today, we talked about this. Without that Max Strus, 59-footer on the 27th to beat the Mavericks, which was miraculous, and Dean Wade exploding in the fourth quarter to beat Boston on Tuesday this past week. Those are 2 crucial wins. Yeah, they're big wins against winning teams, but those 2 wins are huge in their standings. That's a 2-game swing.
Yeah, and that's a 2-game swing because if you look at it, if I'm correct, if you go back to February 12th, and you remove those 2 games, their 2 wins are over who? The Wizards and the Pistons, right? Am I right without looking that up?
Since February, what day was it?
Since February 12th.
You got
they beat the Bulls.
You got the Bulls and Pistons and Wizards.
Yeah. So you beat the 2 worst teams.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
and then after one of those games, after the Wizards win in Washington, JB Bickerstaff said we didn't show a whole lot of spirit. So he wasn't real pleased with the way they played that game. And I will say this, John, their wins in the 17 of 18 stretch there are a lot different than the wins they've gotten over Boston and Dallas. Because Boston and Dallas, guess what that was? One guy getting really hot. In Dallas, it was basically Max Strus who scored a ton of, I think he had what do you have, 4 or 5 threes in a minute and a half, 4 threes in a minute and a half, and then that crazy game winner. And then, against Boston, you had Dean Wade going nuts. He scored 20 of his 23 in the fourth quarter. So those aren't, that's all well and good.
Sam, he outscored the Celtics in the fourth quarter alone.
Right. And that's all well and good, but that's not the way they've been winning games when they were winning earlier this year. They were winning it by sharing the ball, maybe occasionally Donovan Mitchell carrying them, but it really just wasn't I think the last 2 wins have not been that pretty. Granted, you beat Dallas, who's very good. You beat the Celtics, who are the best team in the NBA record-wise. So, from that sense, it's good. On the other hand, you've just ridden the hot hand, as opposed to kind of the whole ball's moving, everything's clicking, everything's sharp, which is what they looked like before.
Well, it's funny, and this is gonna be unpopular opinion, but I think if any true Cavs fan to be, got hooked up to a lie detector test, they'll tell you the win against Dallas and Boston were lucky.
Sure,
luck was not on Boston, on the Celtics side. Cavs had the 4-leaf clover that night. Max Strus, that was a lucky win against Dallas. It was awesome. Don't get me wrong. 2 phenomenal nights that we'll never forget. Regular season wins against winning teams, but the Cavs were out of sorts starting the beginning of the first right before the All-Star break. And I think, Sam, the issue is, and JB Bickerstaff has talked about this since then and continuing, and so has the players. I think what happened was, they're out of rhythm. They're not rotating the ball around much, like you say. They're not they're just out of whack on offense, right? And my opinion is, I think they got a little outgassed. I think they got a little tired towards the end of that streak. I think they kind of felt that little pressure a little bit, but I also think they just got tired in that stretch, mentally and physically exhausted potentially. I don't know. And then you go on the break after losing to Philly, you then split those few games there, and you go on the break, and then you're just kind of trying to reset, and then you're trying to you know push it back into gear after the All-Star break, and they're kind of sleepwalking, trying to get rhythm. All the players, everyone talks about it. It's no one's fault. It's all natural. Trying to recapture some of that rhythm and what had been working is showing a little harder than what it may seem to be. The other thing no one's talking about enough is during that streak in January and February, they were beating bad teams. Most of them. There were some, Milwaukee was there. Clippers were there, but for the most part, they were beating bad teams. Good teams beat up on bad teams. They took advantage of their schedule. We talked about it on your show today, and that's why their standings. They built themselves this pad in the standings a little bit, and thankfully that's what's holding them. Because had they not done that, they'd be in a play-in tournament right now.
Yeah, I mean that stretch moved them up to the second place in the Eastern Conference there for a while, which we kind of knew Milwaukee was going to get hot and kind of make a run there and a comeback where they weren't going to stay down for long, which is what they did for most of January. With the coaching change to Doc Rivers, that really seemed to kind of set Milwaukee back a little bit, but they've gotten it together for the most part and made a nice run. I will say this, and I'm just throwing it out there. It's Darius Garland came back February 10th, right?
Yeah.
So they won that game at Toronto, and I think that I'm not blaming Garland for the way that they've been playing, but they played so well when Donovan Mitchell was running point. And the offense hasn't looked as good. So I'm just maybe it's a coincidence, maybe it's not. And I love Garland, think he's a fine player, but is he I thought this, and we talked about this before, John. Like, I remember before he came back, we were on the podcast, and I said maybe they should try to think about or experiment with Garland playing the two and Mitchell because the offense had been running so well with Mitchell. And it's still okay, but guess what? They had gone 31 straight games of scoring at least 100 points twice since Garland's been back, at least twice that I can think of. They failed to hit 100. Now, part of that is Donovan Mitchell hasn't been playing, so that's going to take away some of your points. He didn't play in a loss at Philly after the break, and they only had 98 that game. There was another game where they only had 98, the Knicks game on Sunday, when they lost to a very short-handed Knicks team at home. I don't know what they scored in that game, but it wasn't 100. And they always struggle to hit 100 against
98.
Yeah, so 98 twice. Since the All-Star break after going 31 straight games of scoring 100. And yes, not having Donovan Mitchell, you're missing about 30 points a game right there. But I just think that the offense hasn't been as smooth with Garland as it was with Mitchell. Now, maybe again, that's a coincidence. And in Darius's defense, he did have a broken jaw. He lost 8 pounds because he couldn't eat. That takes a little bit to come back from. So I think that all I can do is say, okay, Garland and Mobley came back and they don't look as good. And I remember during that streak, John, fans were saying, well, when Garland and Mobley come back, are they going to be able to keep it going? Whether it's their fault or not, right now the answer has been no. They haven't been able to sustain what they had when the two of them were out. Now, it could be a coincidence. Maybe this was going to happen anyway. But the bottom line is they're number 3 in the Eastern Conference. They've got a pretty good lead. 3 games over 3.5 over Orlando, 4 over the Knicks, something like that. 3 over Orlando and 3.5 over the Knicks. So I think that all they have to do is play right around 500 to hold it onto that 3rd seed. But I think that they look now where they didn't before. They look now almost ripe to get beat out in the first round. Now, granted, there's still 6 weeks left, but they look like a team that's destined to get beat in the first round as of the last 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I think there's a couple things here. By the way, the Cavs are 3.5 lead on Orlando as we sit here on the March 7th and 4 games up on the Knicks. It is incredibly weirdly tight from, the 2nd seed Bucks and even you go down the line, down to the 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Anyways, Garland is having a hard year. Yes, the jaw thing, which shocked the Cavs. They did not expect him to be when he got bumped. And he just kept kind of like touching his jaw, and they did the X-rays. They were shocked. They didn't realize that injury was that severe. The last thing they thought of wasn't going to be, you got to have your jaw wired shut.
Yeah, and he finished that game.
He did.
Yeah,
he did. So give credit to him for that. Months ago, but he has not been the same even before that. He's been off this year. This has been a disappointing season for Darius Garland. I would argue, even though his rookie year, the numbers were lower because it's a rookie year. I mean, there's a lot there. You're on a bad team. You're still trying to figure things out. I would say this is his worst year of his career.
I
don't care what the numbers.
Take out the rookie year for sure. Sure.
In his second year, his numbers increased, but like just in general, with expectations and talent around him, this is his worst year of his 5-year career. His turnovers, he's averaging more turnovers this year than he did last year. And not saying his second, third year, he averaged more. But the big talk last year was how much he decreased his turnovers from averaging 3.6 a game in 2021-22 to 2.9 in 22-23 to now 3.1. I mean, it's a little variation, but like he turned the ball over in 2 costly drives in that Boston game.
Yeah.
That the Cavs put the win for Boston on a silver platter, but the Celtics choked. So I love Darius Garland as a player and as a person, and he needs to get it right. I don't know what the solution is. I thought part of the solution was what he said after the game against. We talked about it again on your show last weekend against, who was it? Who did they play? Was that the Pistons game? Maybe
it was
when he said that he the big change for him recently of late, because it was Pistons, because even though they lost in double overtime against the Bulls, he still had 23 points or whatever, and then against the win against the Pistons, he had 29. The big difference for him, his grandma was in town, and he's close with his grandmother, and she's staying with him and give him home cooked meals, and nothing like home cooked meals from your mom or your grandma that's gonna give you an extra boost. But he also mentioned just trying to get his rhythm. He acknowledges it. He is so open about it, to an extent. The Cavs, I don't think like to talk about it publicly, Sam, because I don't think they want to put him on that spot. But you got to think, you got to know, it's a talk behind the scenes. They got to get it right, because he needs to take that step, because he was supposed to be that number 2 to Donovan. And when you have Donovan playing a better point guard than him, they when they're healthy and all on the court at the same time, it's got to be something that's got to be addressed. And got to move him to 2. I couldn't agree more.
Well, I mean, until, maybe they're going to give it a little more time or something, but at some point you have to realize, yes, Donovan Mitchell, the offense was running better when Donovan Mitchell was playing the point. When Garland was out, the offense was running better. So, I mean, do you want to avoid what could be a tricky situation where you tell Garland you move him to 2? Or do you want to win a playoff series? You know what I mean? So you have to make that decision. If you realize that, and you think the long-term solution is for Mitchell to keep the ball in his hands, even though he's not a natural point guard, he ran this offense great, and the offense was clicking great. And also, Evan Mobley was out, and you had Dean Wade playing the 4, which Dean Wade probably only took like 2 shots a game when he started. He still usually only takes like 2 shots a game. But it's the threat of having him out there around the perimeter that kind of opened things up a little bit. And if you look, John, Jared Allen played probably his best basketball of that stretch during his entire career when Mobley was down. Mobley goes down again. Jared Allen has 18 points and 19 rebounds against the Hawks. So, and afterwards, JB Bickerstaff even said, yeah, on offense, they're still kind of finding their way when they're out there together, which is interesting because Jared Allen doesn't need the ball at all to make an impact. I mean,
No.
he most games he's shooting. If Jared Allen shoots 11 times, that's a lot of shots for him. He's more likely to be like 6 of 9 or 5 of 8 or 6 of 8 or something like that when the game's over. So these are things that never used to concern me. I always thought people were overreacting when I heard, well, can Mitchell and Garland survive in the backcourt together? Is that the long-term solution? Are Mobley and Allen? Chase has said that numerous times, and it would get me upset, right?
Yeah,
I mean, Allen and Mobley.
Let's give credit to Chase. He's been on that train for 2 years now.
Yeah, he has.
Now,
he doesn't. Yeah,
I'll say this: we're putting the cart before the horse here, but you and I love to play the hypothetical game. Oh, we know Chase does too when he's on here with us. But think about this. You talk 2 points. You said the Cavs got to figure it out. They want to win a playoff series, or they want to keep messing around with it. I think if we want to play this game, if JB recognizes this and tells this to Darius and Donovan, knowing both of them, they would accept it, no problem. Darius wouldn't care. I don't think he would care.
I think you're right. Knowing them and seeing them around the locker room and seeing their personalities and stuff, I think you're right.
Yeah. Okay, so that's number one. Number two, the pressure is on for this team to perform like now and then in this next month in the first round. What you can ill afford is a first round exit, no matter what seed you are. If they lose as the 3 seed, let's say they stay 3, and they get bounced by whether it's Miami or New York, again, that would be awful. Indiana.
Or it could be Philly with Joel Embiid coming back late in the season.
Could be Philly. It could be Orlando. Who knows? We got major problems. And the Cavs are going to have a big decision to make when it comes to Donovan's future and Garland's future, too.
Yeah.
Because if it gets to that point, you need to think, okay, do you move? If you can get Donovan to stay here long term, do you move Garland? But then you got the big problem with Mobley and Allen. What I find fascinating is this roster dynamics as we sit here in the early March of a team that is a top team in the East, top 6 team in the NBA that is dealing with. I say that based on standings, not that they're actually the top 6 team in the NBA, but that has all these questions. And you said on the top of this podcast, you said it on your show today, we're talking about a different team every week.
Yeah.
When have we seen this before in this Cavs organization? It is a conundrum, and it's got to be driving the coaching staff and Kobe Altman, like giving them fits. And it's no one's really fault. It's not their fault. I mean, I don't know. I'm not trying to place blame on anybody. It's just, it is just an odd dynamic.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. And we talked about this on 330 to go, but the injuries in the NBA today, I don't get it. I don't get it. I'm not questioning people's injuries. I think they're really getting injured. I just don't know why it's happening so much when so much has changed from when I first started covering the NBA in a positive way. You have more medical people. You have more, just more care. You're taking your own flights. Everybody has their own planes. So travel shouldn't be as difficult.
I think. Oh, go ahead.
I just don't get it. It's constant injuries, and the Cavs aren't the only one experiencing this.
I mean, they're legit injuries. You're not calling anybody.
No, I'm not questioning those. Yeah, but
Yeah.
why do they keep happening?
Yeah.
When there's all these things put in place to prevent them, whereas there used to not be as much in place to prevent them, and guys didn't get hurt as much.
Right. Well, that's a good segue, Sam, for coming up after the break. Let's take a commercial break because we need to talk injury. We need to talk about this Donovan Mitchell injury coming up here and why we shouldn't really be surprised this happened to Donovan Mitchell and his knee. That and much more coming up right here on the other side of this break. You're listening to Cavs on the Break NBA podcast right here on the Press Play Podcast Network. We'll be right back. This episode of Cavs on the Break NBA podcast is brought to you by Cleveland Party Rentals. Cleveland Party Rentals is the premier event planning and party rental group in the 216. Their approach is simple. Cleveland Party Rentals treats your event as if it was their own. It's a commitment they uphold, ensuring they elevate the stress of event coordination, allowing you to savor the moments that truly matter. Imagine not having to worry about the details of a birthday party, a bat mitzvah, a quinceanera, a baby shower, or even an upcoming golf masters party, giving you more time to focus on the memories. At the core of their ethos lies transparency. Cleveland Party Rentals is dedicated to offering you pricing that is clear and free from hidden fees, coupled with one of the most robust cancellation policies in the industry. Their Game Watch Party Package includes a screen projector, double down frozen drink machine, popcorn machine, and 2-tap beer jockey box. This is a complete package that transforms your backyard into a cinematic and gaming paradise. It's your all-in-one solution for unforgettable outdoor gatherings. And just for our listeners of Cavs on the Break, Cleveland Party Rentals is offering you a 10% discount on your entire booking by using the code CLEPartiesRock at checkout. That's 10% off your booking with the code CLEPartiesRock at checkout. You can find Cleveland Party Rentals on Instagram, Facebook, as well as their website at clevelandpartyrentals.com. So for your next big event, hire local. With Cleveland Party Rentals, you will not be disappointed.
What's up, everyone? I'm Holly Wetzel.
And I'm Tybus Powell.
And we are your hosts of The Orange is Oranger, a Cleveland Browns podcast on the Press Play Podcast Network. We give you all the dog pound coverage that you'll need to get you through the regular season, hopeful postseason, and I'd say off-season, Tybus, but is there really ever an off-season for this team?
Thankfully for our podcast, Holly, there really never is when it comes to the Cleveland Browns. Don't miss our breakdown of each week's matchup, game recaps, and any and all news out of Berea to feed your Browns appetite. As we know, Holly, dogs gotta eat.
Yes, they do. So hit that subscribe button and never miss an episode of the Orange is Oranger, Cleveland Browns podcast on the Press Play Podcast Network.
Looking for new insights on the Cleveland sports scene with a unique side of Cleveland sports history? Then you found the perfect podcast. I'm John Sabol.
And I'm Scott Sabol, and we're hosts of the Sabol Brothers on the Baseline podcast, a podcast about Cleveland sports, but not your typical podcast about the land's sports teams. Join us as we embark on a journey of sharing a unique and historical side of Cleveland sports history with the help of some former Cleveland sports stars and other historical figures.
All right here on the Sabol Brothers on the Baseline podcast, part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
Hey, I'm Jason.
And I'm Gary, and we love ball cards.
And if you love ball cards too, good news. You just found your new favorite podcast. From breaks to grading.
And from collecting to flipping, join us on the Ball Card Show.
The sports podcast for the sports collector.
Cavs on the Break listeners, we have teamed up with Columbus-based company Homage. You may know them. We've been talking about them on the podcast for a few months. And boy, did they produce some great merch for you when it comes to upgrading your swag game in your closet. They are Columbus and Cleveland and Cincinnati and all of the surrounding markets home for your professional sports teams. In Cleveland, you got the Cavs, the Guardians, the Browns, college, Ohio State, MAC, NHL, pop culture, you name it. Sam, they have some really cool clothes when it comes to T-shirts and hoodies and shorts, and it's high quality as well.
And they have Austin Carr, which I have the Austin Carr as a player T-shirt. That is just amazing. I even told AC that I had it, and we talked a little bit about it. We talked about homage and all the kind of gear that I've gotten over the years from them. Usually, obviously the T-shirts have been just my favorite thing, and there's just so many of them. Obviously, as being an NBA guy and a guy who loves classic NBA stuff, they've got I just love their spin on everything when it comes to how they design retro T-shirts. Frankly, that's been, I mean, I think I probably have like close to a dozen of them over the
Wow.
years. I've gotten them just because I love the designs.
The retro stuff and the NBA Jam stuff's awesome. They do NFL Jam, MLB Jam now. I've got an old school one with Mark Price and Brad Daugherty on it. That was one of my favorite ones. They sent me a cool Cavs one recently with the old gold script from the 70s. I mean, these guys over there keep knocking it out, Sam, with all those new designs and those retro designs and all that other stuff.
Yeah, I have an NBA Jam with Kevin McHale and Larry Bird, I believe. So they offered me, a chance to pick my own NBA Jam T-shirt, and one of the ones I believe was Price and Doherty, and I took Bird and McHale instead.
Oh no, I'm telling Mark on you.
yeah. I don't know. He may know that story, but yeah, I love it, and just because I have so much Cav stuff, and it's kind of funny that I went with Austin Carr but not Mark Price, but I loved it. I was excited as, when you used to get stuff in the mail as a kid, you'd be real excited. That's how I felt when I got the Austin Carr T-shirt finally showed up. So, yeah, I mean, and some of their old school stuff that I have, like Tampa Bay Buccaneers old school logo,
Bucko Bruce.
T-shirt. Yeah. So there's just a lot of stuff like that obviously modern fans of modern teams and their logos and stuff can go to shop, but I stick to the retro stuff, and I just love it because to me it's the best retro stuff out there.
No doubt, for sure. And they also have pop culture stuff, WWE, you name it, college. Head on over to our show notes. We have a link for you to browse and upgrade your closet with whatever you need. Big thanks to Homage. Check them out. All right, welcome back to Cavs on the Break NBA podcast right here on the Press Play Podcast Network. If you guys haven't already, I assume you have, hit that subscribe button, like it. That way, whenever a new episode drops like this one, you get that notification right on your phone. Follow us on X at Cavs on the Break. Follow yours truly, John Sabol, and of course, Sam Amico at Amico Hoops. Okay. We talked a little bit about injuries, and we don't know why they're always happening in the NBA. But Donovan Mitchell, he's out for the next 2 games at the least. Cavs will reevaluate his knee, bone bruise, I guess you could say, right, Sam? Bone bruise?
Yeah.
JB, I sat in on the pregame to the Celtics game of JB, and he mentioned how it happened, because when we got that release, it said that he was out. We're like, he never got hurt in a game. He was playing, didn't get hurt in practice. When did this happen? And JB told us, this is a wear and tear injury. He's been dealing with this for some time. Got to a point where he just couldn't get that explosiveness with his legs and had pain and needs some time to rest. So, Sam, Donovan Mitchell's minutes are up this year. I mean, yes, last year's actually minutes, believe it or not, I looked it up, were actually higher by 1/10 of a minute average. Whoop-de-doo. But his minutes continue to increase since his time in Utah. And he's playing a lot more when he's out on the floor. This was bound to happen. If this is a wear and tear injury, Sam, and his minutes were increasing and his production, and he's running the point more with Garland out earlier in the year, something was going to happen to him, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think, look, if when you're talking wear and tear, that's exactly what it is. It's a guy who's playing a lot of minutes. Eventually something's going to come up. And I don't think it's, John, we talked about this on 330 to go. I don't just think it's the minutes. I think it's the constant And look, I'm not a doctor. I'm not trying to pretend to be one. I just have a theory. And I think that when I first started covering the NBA in 2007 as a full timer, compared to now, 17 years later, I've seen the changes in their practice habits, the fact that they're working out before games, or they're working out like super hard workouts before the layup line, so it's not like they're just getting warmed up. It's almost like they're putting in a full individual practice. There's the shoot arounds. There's just a lot more time on the court aside from the games. And that's where I get a little concerned as somebody who's been covering the NBA. I just think, why are they on the court so much beyond just, for game day, for instance, they have shoot around and then they do some almost full body workouts before the layup line. And then you have the layup line, which is when you're supposed to just really get loose and get ready for the game. When I first started covering the NBA, that was it. The players would show up. They might shoot a couple free throws. Then they go back in the locker room, stretch, get loose, whatever. And then you would do the layup line to get warmed up and get loose. Now they're doing like a workout that's almost as hard as a regular practice before they go to the layup line. And then, you throw in shoot around, and these things aren't super daunting, but they're things what their bodies have to be ready. If you remember, John, think about like when you played high school or whatever, like, could you imagine having a practice in the morning on the day before a game? It just seems like you wouldn't be awake enough. You were probably, you know what I mean? So I don't think those shoot-arounds are really doing them any favors. And that's a coach idea. That's not something that the players ever signed up for. That was, I can't remember who started the morning shoot-around, but I know some NBA coaches don't even like it. They just do it because they feel obligated. I asked Frank Vogel once recently. I said, I know that there are some coaches who don't care want to get rid of the shoot around. And he kind of looked at me and, smiled and was like, no, we want to keep the shoot around. That's a good way for us to have a practice. And I'm like, you're practicing these guys into the ground, man. And I just think that the body can only take so much no matter how old you are. So I don't think it's necessarily the games that are impacting the players. I just think it's the coaches wanting to constantly practice all the time, and the organization's always wanting to practice. The NBA had to institute a rule. The league office had to step in about, I don't know whether it was like 20 years ago, and said, you know what? No more practices after back-to-back games. They had to come in and say that because the coaches would just run these guys into the ground if they were allowed. So there has to be, to me, some order. And you know what? If I'm wrong, then I'm wrong. But you know what? Start by removing some of these extracurricular workouts, practices, and these other things. Because as I said earlier, John, the NBA is a business, and the only thing that people care about is what happens when they buy a ticket. They don't care about practice because you can't watch it. They don't care about shoot-arounds because they can't watch it. Now, granted, you have to do some things to get your team prepared for the games, but how much is too much? And are you placing undue stress on players' bodies? I don't know if that's, I'm not saying that I'm right. This is factual. I'm just asking the question because, frankly, I covered the NBA. I have a fantasy team. On my fantasy team, the entire team was out one night with injuries. The entire 12-man roster was out.
And you're not talking load management. You're talking legit injuries.
I'm talking legit injuries. Yeah. Load management's a whole different thing that the NBA has curtailed successfully with the 65-game rule. By the way, if Donovan Mitchell misses more than one more game, he's ineligible to make All-NBA because of this new rule that says you have to play 65. Well, when he comes back, they'll have 19 games. He's played 47. So that means he can miss one more game. And if he doesn't come back after these three, he's in danger of that. So he may not qualify for All NBA.
I wonder if he's aware of that. He's got to be, right?
I'm sure. I know it's out there. I know other people have probably mentioned it, but I wrote it, and I'm the only one I've seen write it I don't know if other people know this, but yeah, he's dangerously close to not making all NBA, which he for sure would make one of the first 3 teams.
Well, he was second team. Shea Gilgeous-Alexander stole that first team from him last year.
But I'm saying this year he'd be at least third team this year.
I think he'd be second. But yeah, well, it just depends on how he finishes because the injuries are hurting him, hurting that
right. So if
there.
he misses 2 more games, he won't qualify either way.
They got to figure this out. Now, here's the thing: there's a chance that he could be reevaluated this weekend, and there's a chance he may not play again for another few days or so. They just said 3 days is an arbitrary number.
Yeah.
He may not be back still for some time. It all depends on how it heals, and they don't know how it's going to heal. They have no idea. There's a lot of unknown there. Evan Mobley sprained his ankle against Boston. He's going to be out at least a week. He had an MRI on Wednesday. Didn't travel with the team to Atlanta for obvious reasons. So, you're getting hurt right now in early March, which, you're hurt earlier in the year. Mobley, Garland, a little banged up on some other guys as well. Isaac Okoro's elbow, Strus's elbow. Who else has been hurt? Oh, Jared Allen was kind of dinged up earlier in the year. The good thing here is the injuries are happening now, and this is not early April before the playoffs. So you got time to get healthy. And we can wrap this up here too. But one more thing on your point, Sam, about injuries. The one thing that no one's talking about when it comes to the NBA, let's put this coaching and practicing extensively off to the side for a second. There is a major fundamental difference when it comes to players of this era. And LeBron's era kind of fit it a little bit, but not as big as the Mitchell Garland, Jason Tatum era, and even younger. It's that these kids, these superstars, and they were kids, they still really are kids, were only really playing one sport in their teen years, basketball, and they were playing it year round in AAU and all these under 15, 16, tournaments, go to college. And then they're in these under 18 USA teams. This is going to catch up to them. And I think you're seeing that now a lot of times. And it's a fundamental problem in our society and sports in general with kids. You got to be playing more than one sport, but the added pressure from these, colleges, these kids to play one sport to get a D1 scholarship. And then if you're lucky enough to get in the NBA, I think that's a big difference. I mean, AAU has been around since I was in elementary school, since I was in 4th and 5th grade. AAU then, 25, 30 years ago is not what it is now. Now It's arguably way more intense and honestly far worse and should be eliminated. That's a whole different podcast.
Agree. Well, I'll tell you what, I got to wait for the NBA to eliminate it. It takes 2 seconds. If you play AAU basketball, you're ineligible to play in the NBA.
I don't know how you would enforce that because by the time they're in college, AAU is not a thing. You could be.
No, if you played it at all, that would totally eliminate AAU.
But Sam, you're killing your product.
Nobody would ever play it. It'd be gone.
All those kids that played it, all played it. So those kids,
Well, you started at a certain date.
Oh.
You don't just say it now. You say, moving forward, if you're in the AAU, quit. If you're in the AAU as of next year, you're not eligible to play in the NBA. You have to go overseas or something.
I think you've been hanging out with Chase too much.
It's radical. It is a radical Chase Smith-like idea.
It is.
You have to be radical if you want to fix this.
We're going to file that under things that will never happen, but probably should.
It will never happen. But I'm telling you, in reality, I think that, there needs to be some things done. And I think it's terrible that, and I don't really necessarily blame AAU for everything. Kobe did. I remember Kobe Bryant used to say AAU's the basketball devil, he's
right.
Some of it.
Right.
And there used to be some good things about it. I don't know. I will tell you this. I went probably to an AAU tournament. I guess it must have been 4 or 5 years ago in the summer, and I went all day. And I just thought, what is this? What is this? This is like some form of, I just didn't get it. They're saying, yeah, you're going to compete against the best of the best. You're going to play with the best of the best. I'm like, that's not what this is. This is really good players going one-on-one. That's all it was with somebody like my mother or Uncle Jimmy coaching him. And I just thought, and by coaching, I mean, and this is not for every program. There are very quality AAU programs out there, I'm sure, and very quality coaches. But I'm just like, these people weren't coaching them. They were just letting them run up and down the court and then yelling at them. I just didn't see any coaching or any strategy. I just thought it was terrible for the game. I really did. I thought it was terrible for the culture of basketball, which, as somebody who obviously has loved the game for a long time, it's not that I'm hating on people. I love the game, but you always want to see what's going to make it really good. And I think players staying healthy. I think it's terrible that these kids are only playing one sport. LeBron James was playing football. I mean, he was all-state wide receiver for St. V?
Mm-hmm.
Or I think he quit early, either after sophomore year,
right?
Yeah, but I mean, I just think it's terrible. I think that you should, if you're good enough to play three sports, you should play three sports, and tell the coach who's telling you no, you can only play basketball. Just tell him to stick it.
I mean, I played travel baseball and basketball and played football growing up and played all three, and I love that change of the season. I love that change of pace.
Yeah,
and, I would play travel fall baseball, while football. I mean, it was okay to balance it, balance everything, but it just kids these days. I think the other problem is, and we'll put a bow on this topic here in a second. If you're not realistically gifted, going to make it, there's really no reason for you to be playing AAU. Sorry,
I don't like the basketball culture that we've created, and
the culture's not worth it. It's not.
And I think that there's issues under the NBA, under Adam Silver. As much as I like him personally, I just think I don't know. I don't think he's a bad commissioner by any stretch, but I just don't know that I don't know that the NBA is picking up new fans since he became the commissioner. I think they've got a lot of buzz on social media, but are people actually watching and buying? Are new fans coming in? That's your job as commissioners, to get new fans, not just to impress the other ones. So I think there's a lot that, a lot of improvements could be made, as much as I love and enjoy the NBA.
Man, Sam, we were just scratching the surface on different topics, because we need a podcast just on that, because you just tapped into a few topics that just really get me going here on the AAU stuff, but just on why the NBA right now, the product as a whole, is garbage for the most part. What it was 10 years ago or even 5 years ago, I think is just bad. Why the interest is dropping and ratings drop, and a lot of things. I mean, it's increased a little bit this year versus last year. There's a lot of reasons for that. They
had to invent a play-in or a in-season tournament,
which is stupid still. And then you talk about social media. The social media doesn't matter anymore because algorithms on like X, Twitter, thanks Elon Musk, change. So that doesn't really help you. I mean, Instagram, I know, is different, and Facebook, whatever. It is a mess, and you're right. There are some things that Adam Silver has done great, but there are other priorities that I think he needs to be reevaluated to help the game. Because guess what? His product is going to, in popularity, is going to take a big, big change in a year, 2, 3, when LeBron retires. Because your face of your NBA, and I wouldn't say he's technically the face of the NBA anymore, but he's there. Sure. You have a ton of European players in there that is the face of your league, and you don't have any, American or Canadian players there that have that is usually the face of the league. That's the issue there.
Right. And no stories are read on HoopsWire like stories about LeBron. And I'm a Cavs writer for the most part, and our most read stories are usually about LeBron James. I mean, I know people get annoyed, like, why are you posting 8 LeBron stories today? And it's like, because we're giving the people what they want. And that's what people are reading. Now, I mean, people read plenty of the Cavs stuff now, but yeah. So no, I thought the same thing. LeBron, Steph, those guys are getting a little bit older. And
Steph's another one. I mean,
they're beloved. They're beloved by the fan base, and people buy their jerseys. And I mean, he's got his work. Adam Silver's got his work cut out for him here in the next few years.
And there's nothing wrong with the European players at all. I mean, like, they're all great players. You're the NBA is turning now into where it was when Jordan retired the first time. If you think about it, at the end of '98, they went through a weird, random, unknown territory. '99, 2000, 2001, and Kobe saved them in that, because he came out of nowhere to be that dominant force with Shaq in those early years. But that '99 year was weird. Ratings plummeted. They didn't have a face of the NBA, and then Kobe became that person. For our younger listeners that don't realize that, but that happened.
Yeah, I remember that.
The buzz with Kobe Bryant was not there when he was drafted.
No.
So I don't know. It'd be interesting to see where the NBA is going to be in 5 years. I'd love to see where that's going to be.
I will say this real fast, then we can wrap it up. But I will say this as a longtime NBA fan, I can tell you, and I don't know why it's worked out this way. It just has. But all of my top 10 favorite players of all time, and probably top 20, if I really made the list, I bet they're all Americans. There's probably not one European on that list. If I think about it, that's not to say I don't love watching Antetokounmpo and Jokic and Doncic. I think they're fantastic players, and I'm probably too old now to add them to a list of my all-time favorite players.
You're just lazy.
Right. So, but I just think that, if I look back at, the guys who I appreciated the most, obviously LeBron James, Kobe Bryant, those kind of guys, those are going to be among everybody's favorites.
It's kind of an unfair thing to compare to, because you have a vast array of legends, and
right. Sure. I mean, Dr. J's on that list.
That's what I'm saying. You're going deep, and this European influx or foreign influx.
Back when we covered the NBA with chisel and granite, that's what we wrote on when I first started.
Man, hoops wire on chisel and granite. Can you imagine? You need a lot of stone for that one.
Sure would.
Hey, speaking of hoops wire, remember, find your latest Cavs and all NBA talk on Sam's website, hoopswire.com. And that's where you get all your latest and greatest stuff there. Sam's Cavs dribbles during the games were always great. Sam, I still love reading those. I've been reading those for years before I even knew you.
Yeah, I'm planning, now that I've gotten all the business and handled on the website, I think that I'll probably bring back halftime dribbles. Have you seen halftime dribbles?
Have I seen halftime dribbles? When they go to the halftime on the broadcast, I switch over on my browser and go right to your halftime dribbles, hit reload, refresh. Come on, where are they?
As you should say. Yeah, we're 3 minutes into half. Where's Amico?
Yeah, by the time third quarter starts, where'd they go? No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, right.
But head on over to go ahead.
I was just going to say, I'm bringing it back, baby.
Bringing it back, baby. Just like how Sam has taken over the Rock this year, as Chase would say, at Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse.
That's true at all. But
anyway. Yep. Missed you down there at the Rock on the Boston game. By the way, speaking of which, Sam, before we go, Cavs face the Timberwolves tomorrow, Friday. By the time you're listening to this, the game has either started or in the past. No Karl Anthony Towns. He's out for at least a month with the knee surgery.
Yeah.
So
meniscus.
Meniscus, we'll see. And then they got the Nets on Sunday and the Suns. I'll be at that game on the 11th. I'm going there as a fan, I guess, with my brother.
Really?
I'll be there working it.
That's Monday, right?
Yeah. He got tickets, so he wanted me to go with him. So I'm going that game.
Who got him?
My brother-in-law.
Okay.
My Greek brother-in-law,
nice.
Who played professionally in Greece, who played with Thanasis Antetokounmpo. Giannis' brother.
Antetokounmpo.
Whatever. Yeah.
I only have to know how to spell it. You need to know how to say it.
I just call him Giannis. No one really gives a care, But no, he played professionally in Greece with Thanasis. So we're gonna go.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Wow. This is the Thanasis play for the Suns?
No, he played for the
Actually, no,
Bucks,
for the
but he just
Bucks.
got random tickets on the Suns, so we're gonna go there. So
All right. Cool.
Yep.
I'll be there.
if you haven't already, follow us on Twitter, the pod at Cavs on the Break. Follow Sam at Amico Hoops. Follow yours truly, John_Sabol. Hit that subscribe button for the pod. We'll get nice, fresh episodes downloaded and directly to your phone. And you got to hit that subscribe button in order to get those. Thanks for your listening, everyone. Sam, we'll see you soon, buddy.
All right, brother. Thanks for not totally shooting down my AAU idea. Or actually, maybe you did. But
No,
either way,
I definitely did, but it's okay.
I look forward to talking to you again soon.
Sounds good. Thanks for listening, everyone. We'll check you next time.
Congratulations, Cleveland. Your decades-long wait is finally over. The Cavaliers are NBA champions.